An explosion rocked the Russian city of Volgograd today, killing at least 14 people and wounding nearly 30 others. This comes just weeks before the Winter Olympics, raising security concerns in the country. Joining us now for more on this is David Hyde, an independent security consultant. So David, what can you tell us about the suicide bomber in this latest bombing today?
Yeah, I mean, it appears that we've seen this shift in terrorism tactics. The trajectory's changed since 9/11, moving away from things like vehicle bombs. That still happens, but we've seen the suicide bombing come as really a tactic of choice in many terrorist theaters. So these latest incidents just show that how vulnerable things like major transit infrastructure can be when someone can get up very close and is willing to exchange their life for their cause.
We're hearing a lot of terminology like a soft target. Explain what that is for us.
Sure. I mean, when you look at a soft target, it's one that is very difficult to protect and tends to be away from the major object of protection. So this is the Olympics we're talking about here. Sochi is very well protected, 100 kilometers by 40-kilometer cordon, a lot of different security which is ramping up as we speak and will ramp up a lot quicker now. But soft targets are things like rail stations, things like railway networks and other type of venues where the security might not be as tight and there might be more of an opportunity for a terrorist to get a message sent out. But they usually try and find some symbolic reference back to the Olympics or to their cause.
I find it interesting because there have been a couple of people who've mentioned that, well, this is Volgograd, this isn't Sochi, and we're okay for Sochi. What do you think about those comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously there's a little bit of truth to that. I mean, Sochi itself has not been attacked. One of the controversies about choosing Sochi was it's so close to the North Caucasus, which is that area of unrest where a lot of this terrorism is emanating from. So that was a concern initially. Now, we haven't seen anything happen in the immediate vicinity of Sochi, but we're now seeing an amplification of terrorist attacks in other parts of Russia, and many of which have transportation links to Sochi, some of which have links that people going to the games may avail themselves of. So this message is ramping up now, and it remains to be seen whether the authorities can tamp this down or whether it's going to get closer to and implicate Sochi more and more in the coming weeks.
Well, the fact that these terrorists have been able to follow through with their attacks, what does that say to you about security in Volgograd and Russia in general, knowing that the Olympics are just weeks away?
Yeah, I mean, Russia's tried to ramp up. It's obviously a massive country with a lot of terrain and a lot of unrest in certain pockets of the country. They've tried to certainly raise security. They have put measures in terms of having to show ID to get on public transportation. The problem is that because the country is so large and there's so much of a transit network in place that they can't enforce those regulations. So what we're seeing is that, yes, there might be new rules in place, but they're not actually being followed. And people, terrorists included, are able to get closer to some targets than they ought to. I believe that these two incidents here is really going to be a tipping point. I think we're going to see a big escalation in security. The government's going to tamp down on this, go looking for these folks even more than they have before, cut them off at the knees, and at the same time we're going to see a much more tighter envelope of security around much of Russia's critical infrastructure, including transportation.
If there is another attack or more than one additional attack, at what point do officials have to really seriously look at perhaps canceling the games? And if that is done, then I guess does it seem that the terrorists win?
Yeah, I mean, there's really two lines of thought there. Obviously, if the IOC had reason to believe that the athletes would be under threat, that there'd be a legitimate threat that could harm the athletes, they'd have no choice but to take very serious steps, possibly including changing, cancelling, or doing something along those lines with the Olympics. Very unlikely, though. Russia's got a pretty good security structure, hived over many, many years, so I don't think we're going to see that. And you're right. If that was the case, that would mean the terrorists won it, essentially, and it would send a message, not only in that region, but also globally, that if you perpetrate these kind of acts, you will win something. And I think that's a message that both locally and within Russia and globally, we really want to avoid.
All right, David Hyde, an independent security consultant. We always appreciate you being on the program. Thanks so much for this.
Pleasure.